You're listening to EdTech Heroes, a podcast that looks at how teachers in today's classrooms can use technology to improve student learning. In each episode, a hero in the world of education will share their story and discuss how innovation can influence the minds of the next generation. Let's jump in.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to EdTech Heroes. I'm Nef, and today's guest is Ola Brorson. Ola is an English teacher and IT coach at Torien Framtid School in Sweden. Ola has been an educator for more than 2 decades, and his classes have collaborated with students at Kansas State University since 2014. Ola, welcome to EdTech Heroes.
Well, thank you very much. It's great to be on the show.
Absolutely. And some folks who are listening might not know that you are currently located in Sweden. So the fact that your students have collaborated with individuals at Kansas State University is pretty crazy. Can you talk to me a little bit about how that started and what the collaboration looks like for you and your students?
Well, this whole collaboration actually started back in 2014. I had an exchange student at my school, an American that was, doing 5 weeks of practice teaching at my school, and turned out that her mother was a professor at, K-State University at the College of Education, and we had a Skype session, and was, hey, let's just. I like starting, conversations with like, hey, let's do something fun together. So we'll just, hey, what could we do together? So we just thought about an idea that let's share a Google Doc and have our kids collaborate and see where that takes us. And we've done that ever since, every year, like spring semester and fall semester. And it has taken different turns. Right now, we're actually in it. And what we're doing right now is that actually my kids and the K-State pre-service teachers have, they're in Zoom sessions right now this week. And that's also really, really awesome. So it's just, it's real. It's for real.
I love the way that started, right? Like,
Mhm.
let's get a Google Doc. And sometimes Google Docs are not looked at as this collaboration tool, but they're pretty awesome. We can be on it at the same time and see what each of us are writing and ideating on. And it became kind of this backdrop for collaboration that sounds like has spanned years and years across different countries, which is pretty cool. So the other thing that I'm curious about is you are an English teacher over in Sweden. Can you tell me a little bit about how you wound up in education and specifically how you wound up teaching English?
Well, first of all, I have to say that I really love teaching now. I mean, I've been working for, 21 years now, and each year it just gets better, because I'm kind of living in the future. I truly believe the thing, I touch the future I teach. That's the thing that I really love, that phrase, and ever since, I started working 20 years ago, when there were no listening comprehension exercises for my kids at all. If I would have to record, and you might not be familiar with this, but a tape recorder, I'm saying it slowly, but it's an old tool that we used to use. And I would have to do all this work by myself, read text and everything. And then as things move along, things it's just getting easier and easier. And so I think, but going back to how I started my teaching, I think, first of all, I was kind of bored in school. I didn't really understand what school was about. I actually tell my kids this when I was 19 years old and I'm graduating from high school, sorry, here in Sweden. I turned around and said, "Oh, so that was the last time I ever put my foot in a school." And I'm kind of, I tell my students that, and I love going to work every day. So it's one of those, but then I started coaching and kind of realized that I really enjoy working with developing people, making people become, you know, give them confidence and make them better, I guess. So that's kind of how I get into teaching.
For sure. Ola, how old do you think I am that I don't know what a tape recorder is? Of course I do. Um, Next, you're going to tell me about VHS tapes.
Yes, we'll
Uh,
take that some other time.
for sure, for sure. But I think that that is so important and such a good way to think about teaching as teaching the future or having a profound influence on what our students become, and as a result of that, what the broader world becomes. So I also know that your school, the name actually means future in English.
Hmm.
So what does that mean to work at a school that is so future facing and to think about that? What types of responsibilities do you have? How do you sort of think about things like lesson planning at the micro level, but then also at the macro level, what it means to be a teacher working in a school that's so future oriented?
Well, first of all, I just have to say, teaching English as a second language here in Sweden is great because there is very little content, which means that I can be very flexible with my teaching, and it's basically the abilities, practicing how to become better at speaking, listening, reading, and writing, right? And that gives me a lot of options. Well, or us as teacher here in Sweden, what we can do, but working in a school, our principals and everyone within our within our schools. We have several schools across our country. Actually, we have 15 schools all the way from the southern parts to the northern part, and it just gives us, confidence to go. Just go. And it's like we get like we work we work with passion. We work with confidence. Just go for it, and we're not afraid to fail, and we are allowed as teachers to tell the class, you know what, we tried this for 2 weeks now, and it didn't work out. We did it, gave it a shot, and I think that's I'm never scared in the classroom in that sense. Not that I would be scared, but if you see what I'm saying, kind of, I have a great confidence, and that gives my kids confidence, and I think that is that's an important part in school to be able to, you know what, I can do this, and if I fail, it's okay. I think that's one of the most important things in school, to give kids, to believe in themselves for real, and not just as teacher. I think a lot of teachers said you should believe in yourself, and then you keep failing them for testing and or trying, and so I think there should be a lot of room for failing in school and learning. That that's what school is about.
Yeah, absolutely. And theoretically, as educators, we teach students how to fail effectively so that when it inevitably happens, when they're adults, they understand how to take that in stride, take that as an opportunity to learn and to grow from it. I would imagine that the two of us on the podcast fail all the time and have to think about how we are going to overcome that, which is pretty cool. I it also sounds like as part of this sort of idea that failure is okay and we want to look at the future and we want to try new things, you've been one of the forerunners of educational technology over in Sweden. I know specifically with Screencastify, you've been using the tool since 2015, which I think is literally the first iteration of Screencastify. So I'm kind of curious, how did you adopt this really forward looking view of technology specifically?
Well, we started a new school back in 2010, and we had different. Okay, this is so one of our things. We had a lot of ideas what we want to do with it, but one of the things we want to go all digital. We want to be like no textbooks, all in computers, everything web based. And we didn't have any whiteboards. We have smart boards in all the classrooms. No, and this is in 2010. And we said, hey, you know what? I think in 5 years, people will ask us, how do you do it? And that kind of happened. And then that gave us, kind of, let's just, when you go all in, you of course miss a lot of things, but you learn a lot of things. And one of my earlier things that kind of, I had worked 10 years prior to that in a regular school, in a school like with no very low tech. And I one of my first, like the first year or two, I contacted a company because I wanted to give them some feedback. I really liked their online service that they had. So I called them and I said, and I guess they expected someone to criticize them or something. I just said, hey, you know what? You have a great product. I love it. And and they said, oh, thank you. And then I said, you know what? And then as we were speaking, and this is a thought that had never occurred to me as a teacher before. Do you know? Could you make this little change here? Because I really, and I gave them some feedback on how they could improve their product, and no one had ever really done that before. And that was a turning point for me when I realized that, historically, teachers are giving a textbook, and this is what you need to work with. Okay. And now with technology, all of a sudden, we we can create our own content, of course, and it's not set in stone that on page 42 there's a typo. You just I have my kids contact the company. You know what? There's a typo, and then we use Screencastify to do that. To give feedback to companies. So I think that's I think but that's how it started. So it gave me kind of confidence as a teacher to work with technology and understand that it's a whole different ball game to work with technology, because you can change everything, you can improve everything, and it's not static in that sense. And that's one thing that has really changed the way the world works and the way the classrooms should work.
I love that. I love that. I I don't think I have ever thought of it that way, to be honest with you, in terms of a textbook being this document that is going to live for years and years and never iterates, it never improves. There is a thing here in the United States where you get a textbook, and on the first page, maybe this is in Sweden too, everybody who has used that textbook has kind of like written their name and the year, and you go back and you try to find your siblings or your friends, and sometimes they might have written in that textbook a decade ago, 5 years ago. And when we think about how quickly the world moves, it means that there has been no change to that textbook to reflect that change during that entire time. We're getting exactly the same education as our parents did, as our siblings did. And I love that technology allows us to change that, to incorporate world events in a really, really quick way to
Hmm.
make sure that students are starting to get that information as quickly as possible.
Yeah, that's and I think that's the thing we have to like. I love books. I have in my house. I have bookshelves with paper books. you know, and at school when we read literature, we have books, paper books. That's basically the only things that we have on paper, because we want to. And this sounds crazy, but we need to teach the kids how to read in on paper these days, because they're so digital. And here in Sweden, it's crazy. So we have to go, like, okay, turn to page 42, and then how to highlight and all those things. And but with that being said, a person here in Sweden said that everything that, so maybe this is international, but everything that can be digitalized will be digitalized. Everything that can be digitalized can be copied, and the things that will be that can't be copied are the only things that will be unique, right? So I think instead of when you think about it that way, it's like uh, everything becomes collaborative. Everything can become better, and everything can be improved. And I also feel that when my kids see there has been a change in the product online, that they made that change, right? That's cool. I think that's real learning. I did that.
Yeah, absolutely. So you talked about your kids using screencasts as an opportunity to give feedback to edtech companies, maybe even Screencastify at one point. But I am curious, how else do you all use video in the classroom? I know that you've embraced it in tons and tons of ways. So will you tell us a little bit about how video plays a part in your school?
Well, using Screencastify gives us an opportunity to, if give instructions, because it's very, very difficult to give instructions on a Google document when they have to make 4 or 5 clicks, and have to move forward. So as an instructional tool, it's awesome. And uh, and it's also, but I think the greatest thing is to, classrooms aren't very good learning environments. We're talking about open, what are they, like, open offices where like 26 people sit, and we're supposed to feel comfortable, and like the two of us are sitting here in a nice conversation. We have kind of a comfortable chair, and we're relaxed. I mean, this is basically what I want out of the classroom. So when I have kids, for example, I want them to introduce themselves to me the first time I have them right in school. I give them I send them a screencast, so they record themselves. Okay, and I tell them that it's just going to be me listening to this. Talk to me like I'm sitting. It's just a conversation between the two of us. And what happens is, in the classroom, maybe 3, 4 people raise their hands and are active. But by doing this, everyone becomes active. Everyone's voice is heard. And I really, it happens every year that I'm kind of, oh, I can't really, get a lot of productivity out of the student. And then when they sit at home, they have a cool headset on, maybe their gamer headset, and they're in their kind of safe zone, and I'm just blown away. And I think that's, we're supposed to assess them in the classroom, but it doesn't say that we have to assess them in the classroom. It says that, we're supposed to make them improve, and then and so I think that's the thing. And then, it's like one kid would explain that, oh, sorry that I can't do this on my Chromebook, so I used my phone instead. And it's like, I mean, that's problem solving. So I think the whole kids, people these days are used to the video format, and we should do that in school, because that's and it also, I think school is super focusing on academic skills, right? And not all people in the world work at universities. There are other jobs, right? So I think by doing this, if they're not really, very strong in written English, but they're good in speaking, or they can use their hands, or they can use prompts or whatever, that gives them the opportunity to show their skills. And I think that's what school is about.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was an English teacher as well, and
Mhm.
it's a little bit different because it was literature and all of those things. But one of the things that I noticed when I taught English here in the States was that we would want to assess something that was apart from their writing skills. So imagine I want to know, can a student determine character traits after reading Jane Eyre, right? And we would say, okay, write me an essay to show me that you can do that. And there would be students who would be able to talk about it verbally, but the minute that we asked them to put that down into essay format or to write that, that understanding seemed to evaporate into thin air. And I love your articulation of attempting to decouple those things, what students can write and what they can say. And that gives students an opportunity to be able to showcase their understanding and to engage in the assessment in a way that might work for them, right? We
Yeah.
certainly want to assess their written skills, but we don't have to do that every time, do we?
Oh, that that that's totally my point. That how can we give them confidence, and then the next time, okay, I want to do this again. I want to do this again. If we look into the way the world looks, you know, is there Siri? Is there all these voice activated things? The world is crazy with that. Why aren't we working with that in school? And I'm not saying that we should stop writing, not at all, but they have to learn both. And also talking about, I had an example with talking about Google document, when the whole text to speech to text thing came in class, or it came into Google Docs. I showed it to my classes, and I did the mine. I am a teacher. I used a keyboard, and I said, "Who wrote that?" "Oh, you did." "Okay, cool." And then I clicked the microphone, and I said, "I am a teacher." And then, "Who wrote that?" "The computer did." No, I did. So the kids are kind of very conservative, with the way we should learn. We should That's cheating. That's wrong. And I'm kind of no, and I'm the teacher. I decide.
For sure, for sure. And I I think that assistive technology certainly does toe the line. And I've heard conversations teacher to teacher where some teachers might disagree with you in terms of who actually wrote that "I am the teacher" statement.
Hmm.
But I think that when we frame it in terms of the future and what we are preparing students to be able to do, 20 years from now, if a student uses speech to text or whatever the newfangled thing is, their boss isn't going to know the difference. Their boss probably isn't going to care. The question is, did the assignment or did the project get done? And if the answer is yes, then that likely is good enough, right?
Yeah, and then also at the same time, when we work on, for example, this will be a written test. Then we will write in a locked digital environment, because now we're working on the written on your written skills. But it doesn't, 100% of the time we don't have to do that. But that's part of it. So that's also important, that I want to bring that up. That's one thing that we work a lot with, written ability, of course. But as I said, that those it's very, and as I said, in 20 years that will be, or in 7.
Yeah, the world is moving fast. It might even be in 2. Like maybe I'll
Yeah,
talk to you next year
yeah, yeah,
and I
yeah,
say, wow,
yeah,
something crazy has absolutely
yeah,
happened.
yeah. Totally agree.
So I want to talk a little bit more about the speaking skills of your students and some of the cool things that you all have done. So I know that your students are really interested in podcasts, which is cool because our own podcast.
Mhm.
Can you talk to me a little bit about how your students got introduced to podcasts, how they got really interested in it, and how you guys are using them in the classroom?
Well, first of all, I just have, traditionally, kids come to school and we teach them stuff, right? We teach them the whole thing. Like, this is how you count. And now I've taught you how to count, or I taught you how to read a book or anything. So with English these days, and Swedish kids are awesome in English. I think we're like the second English as a second language in Europe, at least. So they have a very high level for this being. I mean, English is not my first language. I speak Swedish, right? So my kids are I basically speak English from my sixth grade classes in class, right? And what happened then was. This was 2 years ago. They were in eighth grade. My kids asked me, "So, how do you get a podcast on Spotify?" And Spotify is a Swedish company, so maybe you heard of it. And and I said, I don't know. You want to? And then I think about fun stuff all the time. So I just, you want to try? And I said, sure. So when they started ninth grade, because ninth grade is the last year they are in our school, and then they go to high school, and then they go to a different high school. So so when they came back from the summer break, we started. Okay, how do we do this? So we started practicing, and then I just realized that, like, how many of you guys listen to podcasts? And then a lot of them did. So they had already, like, role models on how to do this. I didn't have to teach them, like, well, this is, because I wasn't very good at it either. Like, how do you start a podcast? How should you, like, introductions? How should you, add sound? How should you edit sound, or whatever, all this stuff? A lot of them had these skills already. So yeah, we it ended up with actually two full, like, episodes on Spotify, and now it's my second year with ninth graders, and I actually had a fishing show that is out right now, and the kids said, "Can we do this at home?" And and think about that. Did you ever ask a teacher when you were in school, "Can we do extra schoolwork at home?" And they didn't ask me for grades. They just, we love this. So I think that's the thing that I think about a lot. Like, how I'd never asked those questions when I was in school. Never.
Yeah, I don't think I did either. It was, how can I do less of this? Is there no homework tonight? I hope not, right?
Yeah.
Not, can I take this skill that I've learned in school and replicate it at home to do more, especially when there might or might not be a grade attached to that.
Yeah.
So you went from, I don't know how you get a podcast on Spotify, which I'm not sure if I have ever heard of it, to be honest with you. Um, but, but to actually having that podcast beyond there. So how did you kind of walk your students through this like research process and get them to feel confident enough to put it out there for the entire world theoretically?
Well, first, out of 25 kids, there were 14 that wanted to do it, and the rest of them just wanted to practice. And I said, cool, because one of the things that we need to practice, and we didn't do this, of course, the only thing we did a lot of other things too, but this was our go-to project throughout. When we had a little time over, extra time, we went to this, and we only have English 60, like 120 minutes a week, so we don't really have a lot of time, which I've learned that that wasn't really enough. But the thing was, we learned together. I was like, okay, well, how would we do this? So we YouTubed and we did this in class, right? And one of the guys was like, hey, I found something. Let's try this. And so we basically we learned together. And the whole thing about following stats, like our first episode, we had people from South America listening to it, and we could see like if they only listen for 5 minutes, when we can. That was something that I was not aware of. So that was also a learning experience for me as a teacher, and then I could build on that.
Very cool. I'm really impressed by you all going through all of the statistics and attempting to understand listener behavior and all of that. We might need to talk to some of your students to see if they want to help us out with this podcast, because it sounds cool. Like they
I would love to do
fantastic. All right. So I know that you work with students all across the globe, not just students in Sweden, but the students that you collaborate with at Kansas State and really beyond that. So I think that you are uniquely positioned to give one of our teacher tips. And this time I'm curious, how can teachers leverage technology on an international level to break down geographical barriers?
Well, I think of it starts with confidence. I think a lot of teachers are afraid to, and it's simple as that, because I wasn't taught IT when I went to teacher college. I'm not, so I can just make mistakes. If I'm not very good in English, then there's something wrong. So I think you just start with that. What would you like to do? And here, the whole bag is open for you out there. It doesn't cost you any money. There are trillions of resources, and you just go for it, and the kids will love it. So I think it's basic. There are no I don't have time to do this, because as teachers we will never get more time ever. Like, next year, hey, you get a month off for training in this. That won't happen. At least in Sweden it won't happen. I don't know in the US, but at least here that won't happen. So I think it's just, what would you like to do, and how can you get help from outside, extra hands in the classroom? How could you and not think about which tool should I use? Because I think a lot of people talk about, I like when I started with Screencastify, of course I didn't know about the name. I need a tool that can help me with this, and then I found this was the best one, and I'm glad that I stuck with it. And but I mean, that's the way it works. So what do you want to do? And don't, because I personally like when I kind of come up with things myself, and then I find someone that I can work with, and then we work, instead of someone telling me you should be interested in this. So I think just go from, what do you want to do? Like, what would you like to do? And how can you engage your students? And so I think that's my tip to do it. Just not thinking about, has it ever been done before? Just, this would be cool to do. And ask the students. I do that all the time. What would you like to do? And they say the craziest things. And I said, that might happen.
Yeah, it sounds like at one point they said, let's start a podcast, and it did happen. I really like that approach to collaboration and to using technology, with starting with the idea in mind. what do I want to accomplish? What do I want to do? And then from there, determining what tools are going to be helpful in attempting to achieve that. And then beyond the tools, what people are going to be helpful in attempting to achieve that, right? And
Yep.
then
Right.
that gives way to really, really good collaboration. And you might say that the person that is going to help me be able to achieve that is all the way in Sweden, or maybe they're in the UK. But once you kind of know what you want to accomplish, then you know where you might be able to find these individuals.
Yeah, and it's since it's free these days. I mean, it used to be that it would cost a lot of money. You would have to ship, send mail or whatever, packages or something like. Now it's real time. A lot of the things that have come out of my collaborations that I've had with other schools in other countries is there things that I have not planned. The like kids asking students, like with the K State collaboration, uh, one of the Swedish girls asking K State students that she got engaged talking about American engagement rings and comparing them to Swedish, and someone talking about, I'm interested in cooking, and they shared recipes, and I didn't give them instructions to share recipes, but they did it. And so it's just, and I think what the world needs now more than ever is people to meet each other and talk to each other and find that we are all the same, like people, and that's basically what this is about, that, hey, everyone enjoys, having a look into a positive future, hanging out with friends and family, eating food. I mean, everyone around the world wants to do that. So, and I think as teachers, I think that's the most important thing right now, to have a positive attitude towards that, and that, because I'll travel quite a bit, and people are the same. We speak different languages, and that's the way it is, and and by giving my students a lot of opportunities to meet other people. It could be people in the other classroom. It could be people from, like right now, we're working with the school in Miami, and we've been working with school in France, and all kinds of stuff, all places. So I think that's what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. I am from Miami originally,
Oh, really?
so I am very interested in that collaboration.
Cool.
But very, very cool that you've been able to set your students up with folks from all over the place. And I am so excited about this organic engagement. It can feel really deflating as a student to say, okay, we're going to talk to these folks, and I want you to talk only about these one or two things, and we kind of box them in, right? And of course we want them to talk about the course content and all of those things, but we also give them authentic opportunities to talk about whatever is on their mind. And for you, I would imagine that as they're going through this robust conversation around engagement rings or around cooking, that they also are practicing their English skills and are doing some of the things that you set out for them to do initially as well.
Yeah, and that they forget that this is school, you know, and that's another cool thing. I've used Screencastify for many years. When we do book circles, like reading clubs in school, I have the kids. I put them in groups of 4 and 5, and put them in group rooms. Eighth graders, how can you put them in group rooms without a teacher? Well, I record everything. And the thing is, like, I walk around and I visit the groups, and then as I'm walking in the hallway, I hear them say, "Shh, shh, Ola is coming," as they're recording, right? Because they've kind of forgotten that they're in school. They're having a book conversation, and they're talking about the book and other things, but it's all in English, and that's what I'm supposed to teach, right? So so I think, to once again, to put them in this safe environment where they feel like this, there are no there's nothing that hinders me, that stops me from really, showing all my skills. That is awesome.
That is very, very cool. So, final question for you. What are some of your favorite online resources to share with teachers? And where can listeners find you? I'm assuming that by this point, everybody's like, I need more Ola. So, where do they find you on the internet? Maybe if they want to collaborate.
Yeah, cool. Well, first of all, I don't do a lot of social media because, well, a little bit, but I like being present. I never take out my phone and Twitter things during the school day or anything, because I really, I think this is, I'm fully focused on conversations and being at the moment. And so that's another thing. I think another thing I want to tell my fellow, people of the world: don't think about what you're doing in the next tweet. Be present right now, and enjoy the moment. Enjoy being in the classroom. You can find me on Twitter and a little bit, but I don't use it a lot. But my favorite resources, first of all, well, I use it's called Lumio. It's a smartboards web-based service that I totally love, because I can collaborate with the students in my classroom. We can have 75 kids on the same board, and I can share my content, and I can write on their screens, and it's yeah, I could talk about that forever. It's one of my favorite tools, actually. And of course, we have a lot of Swedish websites called Glosboken, where we do vocabulary work, which is really great. That's one of the tools where the kids can practice. I can see how much they practice. I can help them when they practice, and it's also the tool we use for homework testing, and I can adjust that. In the classroom, I can have individual tests without the other kids knowing it. So I think that's another beauty about having computers in the classroom, because we can really individualize the way we're teaching without me staying up till midnight every night doing that. I can do it on the go.
For sure, for sure. I love the idea of being able to differentiate with technology, and to allow students to practice vocabulary and collab and all of those things that technology, I won't say makes possible, but perhaps makes easier.
Yeah.
Ola, I really appreciate you joining EdTech Heroes. And teachers, it sounds like you can follow Ola on Twitter at OBRORSO or O Brorson. I'm your host, Nef Dukes, and I will see you next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of EdTech Heroes, presented by Screencastify.